Coming up on Broncos Connected, two-time Super Bowl winning head coach Mike Shanahan will take his rightful place among Broncos greats as the newest member of the Ring of Fame. The Broncos are preparing for training camp in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic. Find out how they'll keep players safe and how you can watch training camp from home. And the Denver Broncos Boys and Girls Club made the best of their circumstances by giving the club a makeover last month. We'll take you inside. Broncos Connected is next.
Thanks for joining us for the July edition of Broncos Connected. I'm Alexis Perry. Last week, the Denver Broncos announced the 34th member of the Ring of Fame will be legendary head coach Mike Shanahan. Over the span of 2 decades, Coach Shanahan held many roles within the organization, from wide receivers coach to offensive coordinator, head coach to executive vice president of football operations. The impact Shanahan had on the Broncos and the game of football is incomparable. Shanahan served as head coach from 1995 to 2008, leading the Broncos to 9 winning seasons, 7 postseason appearances, 3 conference championship games, and back-to-back Super Bowl wins. He's the Broncos' all-time leader in regular season wins with 138 and postseason victories with 8. And from 1996 to 1998, Shanahan led the team to 3 straight undefeated seasons at home. Shanahan coached 5 Pro Football Hall of Famers and fellow Ring of Famers Steve Atwater, Terrell Davis, John Elway, Shannon Sharpe, and Gary Zimmerman, and will join Dan Reeves and Red Miller as the 3rd head coach enshrined in the Denver Broncos Ring of Fame. While soon-to-be Hall of Fame quarterback Peyton Manning never played under Shanahan, the coach still had a great influence on Manning's career.
Yeah, I have great respect for Mike Shanahan, and what a deserving honor to be inducted into the Broncos Ring of Fame. Mike's teams were always prepared to play, always cutting edge on the offensive side. You know, people wanted to know what Mike Shanahan was doing because he was always kind of ahead of the curve, and he was always willing to adapt to changing times to base his offense on what his players on that team did well, although he was also excellent at bringing in players that were going to be able to handle his offense and to be able to, you know, those certain type of running backs. Might not have to be a first-round pick, but you take the Terrell Davis, who they got in the 6th round, and you find guys that are going to fit that scheme. The offensive linemen, they had to be smart, they had to be tough guys, had to be athletic. Receivers had to be willing to block. You know, a lot of receivers, hey, they want to catch passes. If you didn't block as a wide receiver in Mike Shanahan's offense, you weren't going to see the field. And so it just tells you the quality of coach he was, and that his hands were on everything, bringing the players in and also developing them as players as well. The chance to play for him in a Pro Bowl. It's a relaxing week over there in Hawaii, but if you love football, you're still going to talk football with other players and other coaches. And Mike and I really enjoyed that week and kind of formed a friendship and a bond that lasted, that still lasts today. You know, this is before I got to Denver. I used to see him when he'd come to the NFL Combine in Indianapolis, and always took a moment before or after the game when the Colts played the Broncos, or the Broncos played the Redskins, to shake his hand and have a little conversation with him. And so I've enjoyed his friendship since that Pro Bowl, and really appreciate his support of me as well.
Due to the coronavirus pandemic, the Broncos have decided to postpone Shanahan's official induction and celebration into the Broncos Ring of Fame, and now plan to honor him in front of Broncos country during Alumni Weekend 2021. Well, COVID-19 has had an enormous impact on how the NFL generally runs its offseason. Thankfully, free agency, the draft, and OTAs were able to be conducted virtually, but that will not be the case for training camp, which is set to begin in just over a week. With players and coaches ready to return to the field, here's a look at some of the precautions and modifications the Broncos have made to ensure a safe workplace for the team.
With social distancing, everything changes. So meeting space is being diverted into areas that normally isn't meeting space. We're going to have 3 groups that will be meeting on the turf field in our field house. We have basically the whole offense that will be moving from one building to another just for meetings, where defense will have to spread out amongst all of our remaining meeting space in our main building. Lockers, every other locker is going to be empty, and some plexiglass or board will be put up as an additional buffer in between all of those spaces, and it's still not enough, so we're going to use our field house locker room for the additional players to locker out of. And Coach Fangio has figured out a nice little system as to who goes where. And what we've done here over the last decade with getting our facilities up to speed, with especially our meeting room renovation we did last year in this field house, that has really allowed us to make this a lot more manageable. We don't necessarily have to do virtual meetings now because we have the space to spread it out. It's going to make things a lot easier. Coach Fangio does a really good job with his practices and the way he spreads stuff out. He really doesn't come as a big group for a long period of time. He allows his players to have breaks in certain set points of practice, and the way he actually does his practice really lends well to this scenario, where he'll be able to bring the larger group together once or twice during the practice for a smaller amount of time, as opposed to once at the end for a longer duration. Education probably be the biggest thing. That goes for players, coaches, and all the staff. Just knowing what you can and can't do, where you can and can't go now. Some parts of our facility are going to be restricted to a lot of different people. We have different tiers that we have to develop, and certain tier people will be allowed in certain areas. So being able to identify that stuff, draw it up, and then put enough signage and postage, and you have to have everything very visible for everyone, that they know exactly where they need to be. The visible difference you'll see at camp will be the no fans. When we are bringing in, anywhere from 2,000 to 7,000 fans, depending on the day, that's a big difference to go down to 0. And we did that once before in 2014 when we were under construction, and it was kind of an eerie feeling to be out there during camp and not hear the noise, and it's going to be eerie again. It's something that we're definitely going to miss, and we're going to want back here as soon as we can. I think everyone's pretty excited to see these guys. Not just because they haven't been around, but just seeing some normalcy. As limited as it might be, just seeing guys in the locker room, in the cafeteria, out on the field it's gonna help a lot of people around here just feel a little more normal.
I can assure you, the Broncos are just as sad as you are that the gate at the UC Health Training Center will be closed to fans. But there's still a way you can watch training camp from the comfort of your air-conditioned home. Be sure to check out the daily live stream on our digital channels, and don't forget to tune in to KTVD Channel 20 every weeknight at 6:30 for a daily recap from training camp. Also, be sure to check out the Broncos YouTube channel for exclusive behind-the-scenes content every day.
Still to come on Broncos Connected. The Denver Broncos Boys and Girls Club got a much-needed renovation while closed during COVID. Next, hear why this club is so special to the Broncos organization.
Welcome back to Broncos Connected. When the coronavirus pandemic hit here in Colorado, nearly every establishment was forced to close its doors, including nonprofit organizations like the Denver Broncos Boys and Girls Club. While it was an unsettling time for many club members, the Broncos used that time to create a beautiful orange and blue space for the kids of the Montbello community to return to once some of the COVID restrictions were lifted.
The Denver Broncos Boys and Girls Club opened in 2003. It was a special project to Mr. Bolin and the entire organization because it gave us a foundation in a community that needed it the most.
In 2003, when he opened it, I think it was a lot about inspiring youth and being out in the community and ensuring that there was like this agent of change that allowed youth to feel that they had the resources to be happy, to feel safe, to be educated, to have food.
The Montmello neighborhood is one of the lower income neighborhoods, and it has a high rate of poverty for the children that are living here. Some of the families are transient, so they may not be permanent residents here. Children may be bouncing back and forth between aunts and grandmothers throughout their entire educational career. And so to have one dedicated location that they see as a pillar and a foundation is really important.
This is such a gift to the neighborhood. And there's over 17,000 kids in this neighborhood. There's 8 or 9 failing schools. A lot of the kids are not performing at the grade level. Poverty level is high. But let me tell you, the kids here are exceptional. They overcome so many different obstacles and go on to do such great things. And that's really what defines this club, is the opportunities that the kids get here. They're able to take those and do big things with them.
When you walk into the Broncos Boys and Girls Club, what's interesting is it feels like home. And I think it feels like home for a lot of the people there. I think Rich would say this is a home to the children that they serve at the Broncos Boys and Girls Club. But it still needed kind of some updates. It needed some fresh paint. We wanted to make sure that they had a wonderful court to be having meetings on, but also playing on. It just needed a fresh feeling. And I think that it was apparent really to everyone.
We're very fortunate that we have incredible support throughout all of Broncos country, that we had incredible fundraising years. So as Denver Broncos Charities, the nonprofit arm of the team, we fundraise in order to grant out and do everything that we do in the community. So we worked really closely with Rich and the staff to identify the areas that were highest priority. And that's both from a kid perspective as well as a staff perspective. So updating the appliances in the kitchen for the staff who are serving meals to these kids every single day. Updating the gym, where I would say is the #1 most trafficked area in the entire building, is a high priority. We really saw this as a large-scale renovation project. And when we sat down and looked at everything, and we looked at what we were able to do financially, this became a $300,000 renovation project.
A lot of the stuff was in here was homemade, hand-built, or out of another building. And during the renovation, everything was painted, so it's so clean. I mean, the gym floor, teens are dying to get in there and play ball.
I think while COVID is still impacting the day-to-day operations of the club right now to ensure small groups and social distancing, when phase 2 reopens and we have the ability to bring in the brand new furniture and really finish up all of the plans that we started, it will come full circle, and we can do that before August, before the fall, when we were originally planning on unveiling this to the kids.
When they walk in, I hope they feel inspired. I hope they feel loved. I hope they feel safe. I hope they feel like they have the resources to reach their dreams. I hope they feel supported by the number of staff and volunteers that we have. I hope that they feel like it's a place that's home for them and that they know that they're valued. And that's why we went forward with this renovation, to make sure that they felt loved and cared for and also inspired.
A lot of the kids that come here, some 15-20% are in kinship care, foster care. They might switch homes or where they live 3 or 4 times during their tenure here at the club. But this is their home. Their picture may not be up at grandma's house, but it might be up on the wall here at the Boys and Girls Club.
In April, Boys and Girls Club of Metro Denver asked for help in creating a family emergency assistance fund to help the children, families, and communities they serve during this global pandemic. If you can help, go to the link below to make a donation and immediately support the kids of the Denver Broncos Boys and Girls Club and the other clubs in the Denver metro area.
Coming up on Broncos Connected, with sports betting now legal in Colorado, learn how your game day experience just got even better thanks to the Broncos' new sports betting partners.
Welcome back to Broncos Connected. Back in November of 2019, Colorado voters passed Proposition DD, which legalized sports betting here in the Centennial State. Now, things didn't officially get up and running with sports betting until May of this year. But in that time, the Broncos have been able to enter into partnerships with 3 unique sports betting companies that is guaranteed to change the way that Bronco fans consume content and interact with their favorite team. Here now is Broncos Chief Commercial Officer, Mac Freeman, and Senior Vice President of Corporate Partnerships, Brady Kellogg, to shed some light on what fans can expect this year.
This is a several year-long path that started back when the Supreme Court basically made sports betting legal. We saw some very early mover states like New Jersey get right into the game right off the bat. Their legislatures were teed up to produce a bill and pass it quickly. Colorado was sort of in that second tier of movement, and so we were still in the early moving crowd. And I think, to our credit, I think we engaged a couple years ago. We got out and we met a lot of the people in the space, started discussions. So once Colorado was up and ready to go, we were ready to engage partners, and I think we brought a very thoughtful strategy to it, and that I think has allowed us to engage best of breed partners in all three of the significant partnerships we did.
Within the sports betting realm, there are really three main buckets as I see it. So you have daily fantasy. Think of companies like FanDuel, DraftKings. You can play for free, you can play to win money, but you're competing and predicting against other fans. In legalized sports betting, that is what's come more to the forefront in the last couple years. In this case, you're actually wagering or making predictions against a sports book as opposed to another human player. So certainly the chance to win money in a legal capacity. And then your third bucket is what we'd call free-to-play games. So similar aspects to daily fantasy and legal sports betting in that you are making predictions. What's different here is you don't need to wager any of your own money. You can compete for cash or prizes. And one of the things we're really looking forward to, all three of our partners, so FanDuel, BetMGM, and Betfred are each going to have a free-to-play game, so 3 times as many chances for our fans to win. There is hard evidence out there to show that as people engage more deeply in your product, whether via daily fantasy or now legalized sports betting, that just is another avenue for them to express their fandom. As it relates to our case, having multiple partners, I think will push the limits creatively. They will each put their own twist on this and push each other for the most aggressive and creative concepts and promotions that will ultimately benefit our fans, and our fans will have choices.
We're actually going to see a build out of a lounge here at the stadium, and I think that showcases MGM's strength and hospitality and delivering quality experiences. At the same time, it also gives us a venue and platform to educate fans. I think the adoption of sports betting, there's still a lot of people who really have not been exposed to it. And just like we learned in our move to digital ticketing, there are parts of our fan base that aren't as comfortable with technology as others, and we've got to help them through that transition, and that lounge will be a great venue for that.
With Betfred, we were particularly excited about their expertise operating in a retail context. So that is their predominant business over in Europe, where they're based, is I believe over 2,000 retail sports books. So they know and are experts at how to interact and educate people in a physical, in-person sense. And I think it's that expertise that will really drive that sports book experience.
It's the continued evolution of fans and their connection to their teams and the games. And I think if we see the kind of adoption that these companies have seen around the world, this is going to be something the fans embrace and becomes part of the norm.
Now, the money generated from sports betting in Colorado, the licensing and the fees, that's going to go towards the state's clean water projects. And while it remains to be seen how popular the app and the lounges will be this season, one thing is for sure. Broncos fans are going to have one of the most unique experiences they've ever been able to have.
Coming up after the break, updates on what else you can expect as the start of the 2020 season draws near.
Thanks for sticking with us for this final segment of Broncos Connected. With the NFL regular season just over 6 weeks away, many questions remain regarding just what the game day experience will be like for players and fans. Here is Denver Broncos Chief Commerce Officer Mac Freeman with some updates.
Obviously, these are unprecedented times. We're looking at everything so that if we do have fans, we're doing it as safely as we can, and prioritizing their health and safety, the health and safety of our employees, as well as the players and coaches and everyone in the mix. So I think that's sort of the top priority. So we're ready, no matter what scenario we're facing, to deliver the safest and healthiest environment we can. But again, there's still a lot of clarity that we're waiting for from both the state of Colorado, the city of Denver, and the NFL before we will really have a clear picture of what we're able to do this fall.
Now, for all of you Denver Broncos season ticket holders, here's the latest information we have on how COVID-19 may affect you this upcoming season. Well, sadly, that is all the time we have for this month's edition of Broncos Connected. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Broncos TV and stay connected with the hometown team anytime on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and the Broncos 365 app. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you right back here August 15th for the next Broncos Connected.